Ryan Ramczyk's contract details, which cornerbacks are still on the market that the Saints can pursue, and getting you caught up on all the Saints news from this week, all on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering your New Orleans Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's episode, we're continuing our conversations around Ryan Ramczyk's new contract. We got the contract details this morning, so we'll talk about the structure and what it means for the Saints in the short term and in the long term. It does open up some salary cap space in 2021, so that means that the New Orleans Saints could be in the market for a veteran cornerback. So we'll talk about who's still available and who the Saints could potentially have interest in at that cornerback position opposite Marshon Lattimore. And to wrap up the show, it's our In Case You Missed It segment. A lot of Ryan Ramczyk news has been dominating the airways, but we still have some other things that maybe fell under the radar for you over the course of the week. So we'll get you covered as we continue on with today's Locked On Saints. As always, I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, co-managing editor over at CanalStreetChronicles.com, and your Tuesday co-host over in the National Locked On NFL podcast. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints, your team every day. All right, family, thank you for joining us for another episode of Locked On Saints, our Friday episode this week, our final of the week, but we will be back on Monday. I hope you enjoyed the holiday weekend with 4th of July on Sunday. Don't forget to also check out the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast as well with Vinny Iyer, Sporting News, to get yourself set up to, win yourself a little bit of either bragging rights or cash or whatever it might be when it comes to the fantasy football season. Some drafts right around the corner. But want to talk today about New Orleans Saints right tackle Ryan Ramczyk, who is now the highest paid right tackle in NFL history after signing a historic contract or contract extension with the New Orleans Saints this week. We know that the contract was a 5-year, $96 million deal, but we didn't know the structure of it until this morning. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the details by Field Yates. He tweeted these out at Field Yates on Twitter early on this morning. Ryan Ramczyk's new contract with the Saints, a signing bonus of $19 million, salary by year, and you'll take a look at this number here for 2021, $1.7 million. So that means that the New Orleans Saints dropped his salary cap hit from over $11 million to dropping his base salary to $1.7 million, and then that $19 million signing bonus over the first 5 years of the deal includes this 2021 season, so $3.6 million on top of that. So he's just barely over $5 million, meaning that they were able to drop his 2021 salary cap number by just over $5.5 million. We'll circle back to that here in just a moment, but you'll see an escalating number for his salary cap hits or his base salary hits over the course of the 2021 through 2026 seasons. Not at all under the ordinary. If you've been a Saints fan for probably more than 6 months, you understand this structure. $1.7 million in 2021, then it goes up to 10.5, 14, 17, 18, and 19 through 2026. The thing to keep in mind here is that there's also a roster bonus of $8.5 million in 2022, which means that his 2022 salary cap hit is actually going to be pretty high. It's $19 million in the combination of base salary and the roster bonus, and then you add the $3.6 million signing bonus on top of that. So his cap hit for 2022 ends up being about $22.6 million here or there. So that ends up being a really, really big hit. And that's a year where the Saints, not even with 50 players on their roster, are already $25 million over the salary cap ceiling. But of course, the New Orleans Saints have a plan for this, and they'll cross that bridge when they get there. What does it do for them in the long term? Well, you keep Ryan Ramczyk in the building. He also has some incentives connected to getting first or second team All-Pro at the left tackle position, which would raise his salary each year up to $1 million, hence the $96 million on top of all of this. So That's the total contract value going into 2021, as well as a look at how the structure breaks out over the course of those 6 seasons as well. So now you might look at the 2025, 2026 years and get a little bit concerned because it's $18, $19 million, those 2 seasons. Well, the good news is that by then you already have gotten out from under all of the guaranteed money, $60 million. So the only dead money that exists in 2025 is $3.6 million, which is the salary cap prorate, or excuse me, the signing bonus prorate for that season. So should things for some reason go sideways and the team need to part ways, or they decide to extend or restructure, they're in a comfortable position, which I think the latter, of course, is more likely. They're in a really comfortable position to do so as early as 2024 or 2025. They could restructure, though, as soon as next year if they wanted to. But there's a good model here for what a potential extension could look like for who I believe will be a perennial All-Pro at the tackle position. Now, the fact that there's still a delineation in pay between left tackle and right tackle is a little bit ridiculous to me, if I'm being completely honest with you, because good pass rushers, the best pass rushers, rush from both sides anyway. And you look at some of the names that Ryan Ramczyk has gone up against his entire career and has shut down his entire career. There's no reason that Ryan Ramczyk should be paid any less than, say, a Trent Williams or anything like that. But for the Saints' sake, this is actually good news, and this worked out well because by the time that we get to 2023, 2024, we should be seeing the salary cap rise exponentially at that point, meaning that everything that you're looking ahead to here after that $14 million year in 2023 should be absolute pennies, a bit of a bargain by the time that we get to a swollen salary cap at that point. Now, the last thing that I want to make sure I draw your attention to here is the $5.55 million that New Orleans Saints freed up in the 2021 salary cap with this move and with this extension. The Saints had about that much already kind of from the Marshon Lattimore restructure and then signing the rookie class. They were sitting at around $5.6 million. They now free up about that same amount, which puts them at just over $11 million to go ahead and continue to fill some spots on this roster. They still have 5 roster spots available, only 85 of 90 spots currently accounted for, according to the New Orleans Saints official website, and only contracts that are given that are above veteran minimum will actually count against the salary cap, which means they can go ahead and fill a couple of those roster spots with some players that will come in below the top 51, but they could also go out there and spend at some positions of need, like the cornerback position. I mean, everybody around the New Orleans Saints organization has been pretty steadfast at a veteran corner. If the right opportunity were to present itself, could be an option for them. It would be something that they were interested in. So next, we'll take a look at who those potential corners are that are on the market, as well as those that could be good trade value as well, to go ahead and fill that spot, that cornerback 2 spot opposite Marshon Lattimore. We'll get to that and much more as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So if you check me out on other outlets outside of Locked On Saints and Locked On NFL, you probably know that I am a huge Olympics fan, and I love the Summer Olympics in particular. And coming up here on July 23rd, the Olympics begin, and betonline.ag has a bunch of odds that you can get in on, and I'm sure much more will be on the way as well. One of the most intriguing ones, though, the United States over-under for gold medals is just at 42.5. This is a country that won 46 the last time that they competed in the 2016 Olympics. Now, all of a sudden, you also see them with a 110.5 overall medal count as well. So if you want to get in on that action, anything else around the Olympics or anything else around the world of sports, just head over to betonline.ag and don't forget to use the promo code Locked On so you can get a 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. That's 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit with the promo code Locked On at betonline.ag. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, Who Dat Nation, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Thank you very much, as always, for being here. We talked in the last segment about Ryan Ramczyk's contract structure, his extension structure, and what that means for the New Orleans Saints. Long-term, of course, locking up a perennial All-Pro at the position, but short-term, freed up over $5 million for the New Orleans Saints, who should be sitting pretty somewhere around $11 million of free cap space now, and a need opposite Marshon Lattimore at the cornerback position. And the Saints could go and spend some of that money there. They could go and spend some of that money at the linebacker position, although we've seen them invest pretty highly at that position in the draft, so I'm not sure that they would do that. but also interior defensive line, wide receiver, offensive line depth if they wanted to go that route as well. They could really do all of the above because remember, only signings above a veteran minimum salary would end up counting against the New Orleans Saints' newly open freed cap space at this time. So really what we're looking at is where the Saints can go out there and spend some cash, and that cornerback position seems to be the spot where it makes the most sense because the New Orleans Saints still don't really have a for sure option opposite Marshon Lattimore at this time. They could go with Patrick Robinson, but are they comfortable doing that for 17 games? And I don't just mean 17 weeks, I mean 17 games because of the additional game this year. Are they going to be comfortable with Paulson Adebo, third-round draft pick who hasn't played football in nearly 2 years over there? Or do they want to give him time as opposed to thrusting him into a position to where he has to make a difference, into where he has to perform and be somebody that can be a bit of a savior over there? And there's a little bit of uncertainty around Marshon Lattimore's availability early on in the season as well. So preparing for that seems to make a ton of sense also. So who are some of those options that the New Orleans Saints could pursue in the open market or even in the trade market to start opposite Marshon Lattimore? The idea of trading for Stephon Gilmore has been one that's been floating around a lot. He's on a $7 million contract right now, but wants more money, and it seems that the New England Patriots are going to be willing to give that to him. So I don't know if the New Orleans Saints would go out there and pull off a move to trade for Stephon Gilmore, knowing that they'd likely have to give him a new contract in order for him to be comfortable playing there. But if they were willing to do it and maybe give him a little bit of a bump in terms of his 2021 salary by giving him an extension with some voidable years, paying him a little bit up front, all of these things, then maybe that could be a route that they could go. But what would they have to give up? Probably a second-round pick next year in order to get Stephon Gilmore, who is a former Defensive Player of the Year in the black and gold. I think that's a little bit of a long shot, but just to entertain the conversation is not a bad idea because it's good to know what all the options are that are out there. So that's really your trade market. You could also look at a guy like Xavier Howard from Miami, but I don't think he's going anywhere, and his salary cap is already so exponential that I don't think that the New Orleans Saints would try to push the 2022 situation any further than they already have outside of decisions and contracts that they build themselves, such as an extension for Marcus Williams, which would need to get done before July 15th. So those are really your big trade options, but the open market seems to be the place that makes the most sense for the New Orleans Saints. And on that open market in free agency are three names that make a lot of sense for New Orleans. We've already heard the Saints being connected early on in the offseason with Richard Sherman, somebody that is a veteran corner in the NFL, has a long time history with Chris Richard, the New Orleans Saints' new defensive back secondary coach with the team after Aaron Glenn ended up going to be the DC in Detroit. So there's a rapport there. There's an understanding there. Richard Sherman didn't seem very happy that they went ahead and drafted a guy like Paulson Adebo, the former Stanford corner, in the third round of the 2021 draft. But honestly, he'd be a pretty outstanding mentor for the guy. Both former wide receivers, both big-bodied physical guys that also excel in zone coverage, high football IQ guys, both Stanford grads. That's got to count for something, I guess. But honestly, I mean, you look at the build, you look at the skill set, they're pretty similar in that way. So I think he'd be a fantastic guy to plug in opposite Marshon Lattimore and also serve as a really fantastic mentor for a guy like Paulson Adebo, who's making a very similar transition and has made similar transitions than Richard Sherman did throughout his career. So I think that that would be a value added with Richard Sherman and the New Orleans Saints finally coming to some kind of an agreement to get him in New Orleans. I think in any of these cases, when it comes to a free agent, it's a one-year deal that you're looking at with the opportunity to be able to walk out of that one-year deal in 2022 and go and sign elsewhere. I don't know how well that would work out for Richard Sherman at this point in his career, but if the New Orleans Saints and Richard Sherman could come to some type of a lucrative 1 year or fake 2 year deal, then that could end up being the way that the Saints could go, and I think would be a good move by New Orleans and for Richard Sherman. Another name that a lot of Saints fans have pointed out as a great fit for the New Orleans Saints, and they're absolutely right, is Steven Nelson, 5'11", 194 pounds, 2 interceptions last year in 2027 over the course of his career. I think he is somebody that has played quite a bit of what the New Orleans Saints like to play over on defense and is perfectly comfortable being in man-to-man situations with safety help over the top. It's very similar to what the situation was for him last year with a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick roaming, well, really all over the field, but in particular, those situations in which he was roaming deep while Steven Nelson was matched up in the face of a receiver at the line of scrimmage. So I think Steven Nelson could be a really interesting piece for them. Another reason why I like him a lot is that he does have some good athleticism as well. He's not the supreme athlete that maybe a Marcus Peters is, but when you look at what Steven Nelson brings to the table, considering he would be somebody that would be playing a lot over the top of Z receivers, which means that receiver is lined up off the line of scrimmage. There's natural separation at the line of scrimmage, so it's hard to jam a receiver at the line because of that. Then you want some athleticism and some ability to be able to generate some closing speed. And Steven Nelson has shown all of that throughout his time in Pittsburgh and even before throughout college. So Steven Nelson could be a really good opportunity and a really good option for the New Orleans Saints, maybe a little bit cheaper than Richard Sherman at that point as well, especially at this point in the offseason. And the last corner that I'd like to mention, Gareon Conley, former Ohio State Buckeye, might as well, right? Came into the 2017 NFL draft, which was, of course, historic for the New Orleans Saints. You just saw another one of those guys get paid, and another one waiting around the corner with actually two of them, technically, with Marshon Lattimore and Marcus Williams. So Gareon Conley, who's drafted 24th overall in the first round of that draft, could be a target for the New Orleans Saints. And it would make a lot of sense. 6 foot, 190 pounds. I know he doesn't have a massive amount of interceptions to his name, 4 picks over the course of his career and 1 touchdown, but he also didn't play in the 2020 season, changed teams in the 2019 season, going from the then Oakland Raiders to the Houston Texans. And when he was with Houston, he played extremely well. He appeared in 8 games, allowed only a 52.2% completion percentage and an 87.1 passer rating when targeted. He could be a really intriguing option for the New Orleans Saints, who have invested in Ohio State linebackers at various points throughout their career in the secondary. You look at Malcolm Jenkins, who of course they drafted, but then also signed as a free agent. Marshon Lattimore, Von Bell, who they also drafted. Eli Apple, who they traded for and actually started off pretty well for them before falling off the eventual cliff that he did. But when it comes to a guy like Gareon Conley, he's young. He has a lot of scheme versatility, and he's coming from systems like Ohio State, even though a few years removed from it, that have translated well to this New Orleans Saints defense before. Could it happen again? Gareon Conley would probably be the cheapest option out of the best free agent corners that are still available on this market, and wouldn't be mad to see the Saints pull the trigger there. All right, y'all, coming up next, we're going to dive into our In Case You Missed It segment to wrap up the week here at Locked On Saints. Ryan Ramczyk has dominated the airwaves, but we're going to take a look at a couple of other stories, including Kawaan Baker working with all of the New Orleans Saints quarterbacks, making that a big-time point towards his offseason, and how the New Orleans Saints are trying to get the edge in the weight room with some innovative technology. We'll talk about that and much more as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's summer. It is hot outside. Why am I even wearing a sweater? There are so many questions, but none of them sometimes are as big as the questions that you might have because of the heat damage that can happen to your vehicle. To get all the answers that you need and all the parts, pieces, and accessories that you might need to replace because of just how dang hot it is outside, go and check out rockauto.com. It's the easiest and simplest solution for everything that you need for your car, truck, or otherwise type of vehicle. Whatever it is that you're looking for, you just head over to the website, you put in your make, your model, the year of the vehicle that you're looking for, let them know what part you're trying to seek out, and they're going to give you several options that are cheaper than what you're going to get at the chain store from around the corner. No wait, no, we have to order it for you. Don't worry about that. Take the middleman out, pay less, save yourself some money and save yourself some time, and order it yourself online and have it shipped directly to your door in a safe and convenient way. So go and check them out at rockauto.com. When you get to checkout, don't forget to let them know that Locked On sent you by writing Locked On in the How'd You Hear About Us section. Amazing selection, reliable low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. 343,703. That's the number of Built Bar boxes the New Orleans Saints could buy right now after the money that they've saved with Ryan Ramczyk's extension. To get one of those boxes, head over to BuiltBar.com, and you don't have to worry about paying $11.6 billion for them because I'm going to give you a discount code, get you 15% off for an already affordable box of 18 of the most incredible protein bars you have ever had in your entire life. There's 9 flavors. You get a pair of each in the mix box, or you can build your own box with 3 different flavors and get about 6 per box that way as well. Oh, it's just a fantastic deal. So go and check them out over at builtbar.com. Whether you're a fan of coconut and chocolate, peanut butter and chocolate, mint and chocolate, raspberry and chocolate, whatever it is, there's something for everybody over at builtbar.com with 9 incredible flavors and limited edition flavors, including grasshopper cookie on the way. They taste like Thin Mints. They're absolutely incredible. So go and check them out over at builtbar.com. Don't forget to use the promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, to get 15% off of your next box of Built Bars. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at builtbar.com. Let's get it. Who Dat Nation, wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Saints with our weekly installment of In Case You Missed It, making sure that you get caught up with all of the news from around the week and even a little bit beforehand if we need to go back, like we will this week, to make sure you know everything going on around your New Orleans Saints. Now, this week has been absolutely dominated around the Ryan Ramczyk extension, so in case somehow you missed it, which includes only tuning into a third of today's episode, that would mean that you missed the fact that Ryan Ramczyk has been extended with the New Orleans Saints. Now, I know none of you missed it, but just to recap those numbers, 5-year extension, keeping him in New Orleans through the 2026 season, $60 million guaranteed, $96 million overall, $19.2 million per year, making him the highest paid right tackle in NFL history. We broke down the rest of the contract earlier and what it means for the New Orleans Saints. I'm sure we'll be talking more about it next week as well. So in case you missed it, let's get you caught up on everything else around your New Orleans Saints. In case you missed it, New Orleans Saints rookie wide receiver Kawaan Baker, drafted in the 7th round of this year's draft out of South Alabama, says that he's been working with every quarterback on this roster. Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston, Ian Book, Trevor Siemian, don't matter. Kahwan Baker is getting that work in with every quarterback on the roster. And I think that it is a very smart move on his part because you never, ever know. Because we might want to talk about this quarterback competition, but you have to be prepared for the unsavory as well, just in case somebody gets hurt, any of those other things. So Kahwan Baker taking a wise approach here and building rapport with every quarterback on the roster. What this also means is that Taysom Hill has been working with New Orleans Saints players. Now, we didn't learn that up until mini camps that he had actually spent the last month in New Orleans working with players. We didn't know who they were, what some of the names were. He's been very quiet about his offseason process, while Jameis Winston has been on social media. It's been a little bit more open and transparent. We talked about the 2 approaches to this battle already earlier on in the offseason, but here now we get our first glimpse at who it is that could have been one of those receivers working with Taysom Hill during that month, with Kahwan Baker. Again, this is a very smart decision to make as a rookie coming into the NFL, and especially in one that with a team that has a potential opening along the wide receiver positions beside, or let's just say below, I guess, Michael Thomas, right? You have a lot of different ways that you can make this roster as a receiver. Kahwan Baker maximizing his potential with other quarterbacks. In case you missed it, the Saints have been taking an innovative approach in the weight room with 3D cameras and motion tracking devices to make weight training safer and more efficient. This is all thanks to Luke Johnson, by the way. This story is absolutely incredible. He wrote it up over at NOLA.com. You can go and check it out. I also tweeted it out this morning. You can follow him on Twitter at @ByLukeJohnson to keep up with all the great work. Friend of the podcast as well. He's come through before and he'll come through again. This is an incredible, really, really cool piece of innovation. We talk about the New Orleans Saints all the time as being innovative on the field, but what they have been doing over the past few seasons with their integrations with Zebra technology, GPS tracking, taking care of their players and monitoring their fatigue in ways that other teams haven't been doing. They've also been innovative off of the field, in the locker room, in the training room, on the practice field, and beyond, even with their rest periods. This is really cool, though. A great quote from this piece was talking about the fact that, fans, analysts, media, players, teams, they can all track how many yards or miles per hour, let's say, that, Alvin Kamara runs on a big spectacular play, but the weight room has been stuck in the Stone Ages, as this piece mentions. And as we've heard from Perch Technology, who have been really doing a great job in terms of trying to get this caught up. So let me explain this. And Luke does a great job in sort of like the explain this like I'm 5 kind of way that I needed for this, because this is kind of complicated. a lot of times when you talk about weight training, what you're talking about is volume in terms of the number of reps, and then you're talking about mass, the max weight that somebody is able to lift. And oftentimes you set a max weight, you set max reps, and then that becomes the sort of peak that that player has to be able to reach over and over again, or that they try to replicate over and over again throughout the season. The issue is that, and as this piece explains, and as the weight staff and the training staff of the New Orleans Saints explain, is that they go out there every week and essentially experience a car wreck on the field. Then they have a week to get ready before they experience another car wreck. So instead of basing weight training on mass and volume, what they've started to do is base weight training on velocity. How quickly can somebody lift the weight that they're being given, and then finding the optimal speed and velocity that work for the player. If they lift it too quickly, add weight. If they lift it too slowly, take weight off. Find where it is that is the most sustainable and efficient sort of speed, velocity, mass, and volume combination, and put all of that together so that you can adjust weight over the course of the season, depending upon if a player is at 80% of their health, 20% of their health, and be able to adjust accordingly to that based upon the health of the player. This, to me, is really cool, right? And I think that this is really neat to see the Saints kind of ahead in this innovative practice in the weight room, one of the first teams to be able, or to start doing something like this. And we'll see if it shows any benefits on the field, or at least if it shows any benefits in the weight room, they will know, and they'll be able to continue to monitor health more adequately throughout the season in collaboration with their training. And finally, in case you missed it, Khai Harley, Vice President of Football Administration for the New Orleans Saints and unofficially termed Cap Guru, has been absolutely outstanding. We talked about the contract structure for New Orleans Saints right tackle Ryan Ramczyk and what it's done for the Saints. His innovative approach to the salary cap has continued to keep the Saints competitive. And he spoke about it a little bit with New Orleans media last week. And it was a great interview. It gives you some great insight into what Khai Harley looks at, how he's done it and what he's done. And for the most part, he credits wanting to retain talent with the New Orleans Saints and wanting to keep key players as the sort of impetus for all of the innovative things that he's learned to do with the salary cap and begun to do with the salary cap. This guy should be at the top of everyone's list when it comes to seeking out a general manager in the near future. But it's clear that he loves what he's doing with the New Orleans Saints, and I hope the New Orleans Saints continue to find a way to keep him around, because he has been a huge part of the Saints' success, particularly over these most successful recent 4 seasons that we've seen with New Orleans. If you want to check out that interview, you can head over to NewOrleansSaints.com, or you can check out the New Orleans Saints YouTube page. You can see the full 27 to 30 minute interview over on either of those pages on video. All right, y'all, that gets you caught up with everything you need to know around the New Orleans Saints from this week. To get caught up on all of today's sports action, go and check out the Locked On Today podcast hosted by Peter Bukowski. Everything you need around the world of sports in less than 20 minutes, wherever it is that you get your podcast. Make sure you come through tomorrow. We have some great guests. Joe Marino is coming in to brag about the New Orleans Saints draft classes, but also talk about where they could have hit a little bit better, particularly in the 2018 draft. And then we'll also talk with Brandon Olson, who's going to come through, talk a little bit about CJ Gardner-Johnson's history with the Florida Gators, as well as explaining how these new name, image, and likeness deals, which I absolutely love, by the way, in college football could end up affecting the transition to the NFL. So we'll have all of that and much more for you as we continue on with another week of Locked On Saints beginning on Monday. Y'all have a blessed and safe weekend. Enjoy the holiday, and I will see you on Monday. As always, I appreciate you very much for coming through. You can always find me on Twitter at RoshXan, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how your mom and them, and trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.